Targeting tax, objective number 1. The student will describe functional relationships in a variety of ways. In problem number 1, the question asks which graph best represents x plus 3y equals 12. We will use our graphing calculator to graph this line and then match it up to our graphs. To do that, we must first solve for y. So begin by rewriting the equation on your paper. Now solve for y. Subtract x from both sides gives me 3y equals negative x plus 12. Dividing by 3 each term will reduce to y equals negative 1/3 x plus 4. We are now ready to input this into our calculator. Now let's input into our calculator. Turn your calculator on, go to the y equals, parentheses, negative 1 divided by 3, close parentheses, x plus 4. Let's do a zoom 6 for a standard window. Now compare what you have on your graphing calculator screen to your choices A, B, C, and D. In doing that, it's very easy to tell that the correct answer for this question will be C. In problem number 2, which graph best represents x minus 3y is greater than negative 12? Again, we're going to use our graphing calculator to help us find the line. We will also have to look at whether the line is solid or dotted and where the shading is to help us make a conclusion on which is the best answer. But before we can do any of that, we again must solve for y. So again, rewrite your equation. X minus 3y is greater than negative 12. Solving for y, we need to subtract x, so we have negative 3y is greater than negative x minus 12. We will now divide by a negative 3 each term. Dividing by a negative on an inequality will cause the sign to flip. So we have y is less than 1/3 x plus 4. Since our equation is y less than, we need to look for an answer that is shaded below the line. Since all of our answers are shaded below the line, we need to graph the line to choose which will be the best answer. So again, we want to go back to our graphing calculator. So we will go to y equals, clear out the line you have, and we can input parentheses 1 divided by 3 parentheses x plus 4. Zoom 6. Comparing our graphing calculator to our answer choices, we notice that we have 2 that will work. The difference is one has a dotted line, one has a solid line. Since our equation does not have an equal sign, we want to choose the answer with the dotted line. So our correct answer is F. problem number 3, which inequality best describes the graph shown below? We are given 4 equations to choose from. In order to select the best, we're going to do what we call a linear regression. To begin that, we must choose 2 points on the line. Any 2 points that lie exactly on the line will work. We're going to choose the point 0, 3, and the point 3, 0. These were 2 easy points to choose that were exactly on the line. To form a linear regression, you need to hit Stat, and then on Edit, hit Enter. We're going to input our x coordinates in L1 and our y coordinates in L2. If you have something in your list, arrow up to L1, hit Clear, arrow down, over, arrow up to L2, clear, arrow down. Now you should be ready to input your values. Remember, our first point was 0, 3. So we'll put in the 0 for the x-coordinate. Our second point was 3, 0. So we'll put in 3 for that x-coordinate. Arrow to the right, and now we'll put in our y-coordinates, 3 and 0. Now go to Stat and over to Calculate. Go down to number 4, Linear Regression. All of our lines are linear, so we only need to check a linear regression. Let's hit Enter, Enter, and we have our linear regression. Now we need to record it. Our line is y equals, a value is -1, so it's -1x, plus our b value, which is 3. Now match that up to the inequality. Notice that our inequality is shaded above, so each one of these would work. They are each greater than. Our inequality is a solid line, so each one of these would still work. All we need to do is match up our regression equation with the correct answer. So the answer is B. In problem number 4, we're asked which equation best describes the relationship x and y shown in the table. So again, since we are looking for an equation and we can get points, we want to do a regression. Our list of answers contains both linear and quadratic. So what we need to do on our calculator before we begin is to turn on our diagnostic. So go to Second Catalog. Catalog is above the 0. Go down. This is in alphabetical order until you get to Diagnostic. Go to Diagnostic On. Make sure your marker is pointing at that. Hit Enter and then Enter again. Now go to Stat. We're going to input into L1 our x values and into L2 our y values. So go to Edit, hit Enter. Remember to clear anything out that you have in your L1 or L2 that is already there. So we're going to input -2, 0, 1, and 3. Arrow over, -4, -8, -7, and 1. Make sure you check to make sure your list match your x's and y's. Now begin by calculating a linear regression. Go over to calculate, number 4, enter. Notice our linear regression would be y equals 1x minus 5. In looking at our answer choices, that is not a choice. Another way that we know that our linear regression is not a good choice is by looking at the R value. And R value tells you how linear the data is. The closer it is to 1 or -1, the more linear the data. Notice that ours is 0.5, not very close. So our linear is not going to be a good choice, which means that this data must be quadratic. So go back to Stat, over to Calculate. Number 5 is the quadratic regression, so arrow down to number 5 and hit Enter, and enter again. On a quadratic regression, you're looking at the R-squared value. Notice it is 1, so that means that this is a good fit. Let's write down our quadratic regression. Y equals an A value of 1 gives me 1x squared, a B value of 0 gives me no x, and a C value of -8 gives me -8. Now match that equation with the answer and we get a correct answer of J. In problem number 5, we are asked which equation best describes the relationship between x and y shown in the table. Same type of question as in number 4. So again, we want to do a linear regression and a quadratic regression because our equation answers are both linear and quadratic. So hit Stat, over to Edit. Again, if you have things in your list, clear them out. In list 1, we're going to put our x values. -2, 0, 1, 3. Arrow over, and our y values go in list 2. -12, -8, -6, -2. Again, check your list to make sure they match your x's and y's. Now go to Stat, over to Calculate. Remember, we will begin with finding the linear regression, so go down to number 4, hit Enter, Enter. Notice our R value is a perfect 1, so that tells us that our data is linear. So now all we need to do is write down our linear regression and match it to the correct answer. Our linear regression will be y equals 2x minus 8. So the correct answer for number 5 is A. Problem number 6. Monica weighs 140 pounds. She has recently gone on a low-carb diet and is losing 3 pounds a week. Which table best describes her current weight, W, after N weeks? To begin this problem, we have to write an equation for what's going on in the problem. When we think about this, Monica starts at 140 pounds. She is losing weight, so that means we're going to subtract 3 pounds a week. And remember that in the equation, N is going to stand for weeks. So 3N. That is going to equal her current weight, which is the variable W. So now we have our equation, W equals 140 minus 3N. To get it ready to go into the calculator, our W will become our Y equals 140 minus 3, and instead of n, we will use x. Now we're ready to input this into our calculator. To input this into our calculator, we're going to go to our y equal, clear out anything you have, put in 140 minus 3x. Since we're looking for a table, we're going to use the table that is in the graphing calculator. To begin, we want to go to second table set. Since our x values begin at 0, we want our table set to start at 0. Then we will increase the table by 1 each time. Make sure both your independent and dependent are on auto. Now go second table, which is second graph. Now that you have your table, compare your table in your graphing calculator to each table in the given answers. Notice at F we have 0, 140, which matches our graphing calculator, but 134 does not match. 1 should be 137, so F cannot be an answer. H, we have 0, 140, 0, 140. Then it goes to 2. In table H, 2 is 137. In our graphing calculator, 2 should be 134. So H is not an answer. Looking at G, 1 is 137. On our calculator, 1 is also 137. 2 is 134. 2 is 134. 3 is 132. 3 is 131. So G cannot be our answer. On J, 0 is 140. 0 is 140. 1 is 137. 1 is 137. 2 is 134. 2 is 134. 4 is 128. 4 is 128. And 6 is 122. 6 is 122. So J is going to be our answer. Now if the tables contain numbers that you could not see, you can arrow down to get more x values. You can tell by the process that we went through that it is very important to check all the numbers in the tables, not just the first two. Often the first two will work, but later on those numbers do not. For this problem, the correct answer was table J. Now let's look at the skills that we targeted. In problems 1, 2, and 3, we were targeting graphing, so we used our y equals to find the correct graph that matched the equation. In problem number 4 and 5, we were looking for an equation, so we used a regression to find the equation. In problem 6, we were given an equation, or we found an equation, and we needed to look for a table that worked. So we used our table function on our graphing calculator. So this concludes targeting tax objective number 1. The student will describe functional relationships in a variety of ways.